Thanks for coming out tonight to talk about our downtown connector project. I will try and talk over what we've got outside. We're going to try and leave the door open for folks still coming in. So hopefully you can hear over me or over that noise outside. If you can't, please let me know if you can. We'd like to start off tonight just with some introductions. I am Craig Gregory, the Public Works Director. We've got Bob Towser, our city engineer, and also our partners to answer some questions also from MTA, Danette Brannon, and from Mason PUD3, Justin Holdsgrove and Coral Miller. We were hoping to have also our other partner, Mason Conservation District, out with us tonight. Did they sneak in on me? No. Oh, and our commissioners that came out tonight, Tracy Moore and Commissioner Kathy McDowell. And we couldn't have done this without the support of the commission and this design. We voted on it a few months back to get this project started, and got to a point where we had started to move through design, and we're hoping to get full design done by early February. So funding through for this project. And feel free, please, to ask questions. We'd really like to just get as much feedback as we possibly can through this meeting. So please just raise your hand and ask questions throughout this. We're not going to wait until the end. I know there are going to be most likely quite a few questions, so we will try to answer them, either myself or our partners or Bob Towser, our city engineer. So please feel free to interrupt and ask questions as we go along through this. So the funding sources that we have for this project will be, we have a TIB, Transportation Improvement Board grant application in for just over $3.3 million. And we will hear back from TIB on November 17th whether we actually got funded for this project or not. If we didn't get funded for this year in 2017, we will likely look at Transportation Improvement Board funds again for 2018. And what this does for us getting through full design is it moves our project up the priority list for them having a shovel-ready project. So that is, scoring-wise with them, it really goes a long way as far as getting a design fully done and ready to go. If TIB doesn't end up funding this project, we will go look for other funding sources, most likely federal grants to get this done. And then our other funding sources are our local partners, like I mentioned before, PUD3, MTA, and also the Conservation District have kicked in a good portion of money to help us out with this project. PUD for lighting and design, and also a transformer for this project, MTA for a bus pull-off, and also some rapid flashers through this corridor to make walkability and pedestrian safety a priority in this. And then Conservation District is doing some work for us for stormwater and landscaping, low maintenance landscaping through them. So keep in mind that this design is very early in its stages, so that is really why we are wanting to get the word out now, so that we can get some feedback so that we don't get too far down this road and then not be able to make changes. So what you're going to see tonight is really just a concept. So we would love to hear all of the feedback and input. So if you don't like something, certainly speak up. If you love something, also let us know. And a few things to keep in mind with the granting agency, there were some requirements also with them. So some of the things that you will see in this were really out of our control. So the few things that we will look at tonight are the sidewalks and the walkability for multi-use paths. and also traffic calming throughout this project. So a few things we didn't have much control over. It was more the granting agency, and when somebody's going to give you better than $3.3 million, you tend to listen to them. So we kept that in mind when we were looking at this. So we'll start at 1st Street down by Mickey's Deli, and we will move up the project through 7th Street at the light at the library, and then ultimately end up at Skip Horse at the top of the hill. And that is the length of this project. So the lower portion between 1st Street and 7th Street, existing, we've got up on this top portion. So right now you can see that these lanes are fairly wide. They're 14-foot traveled lanes, and then a couple of large planter strips on either side that really aren't planter strips. They haven't been maintained very well, and don't look real aesthetically pleasing. And then some fairly small sidewalks on the south side of the road, not much on the north side of the road throughout this project. So we'll look at the lower section or cross section. Most likely, some of this will change. Right now, it shows a 12-foot travel lane. We're looking at reducing that down to 11-foot travel lanes with a 10-foot sidewalk. So if you look at this cross section, this is the south side of the road. So it would be the courthouse side of the road on your right-hand side. And then the north side of the road is your left-hand side. So a 10-foot sidewalk on the south side of the road, the entire length of this project, a planter strip in between that, and then the curb and gutter, and then moving to the other side, another planter strip and a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side of the road. And this will include full ADA ramps at every intersection throughout this, also to help with pedestrian movements. Yes?
I don't think I've ever walked on a 10-foot sidewalk. Why so wide?
It is considered a multi-use path. That was one of the things through TIB, that we could provide enough width so that you could have multi-use of that, whether it be bicyclists, pedestrians,
Okay.
whatever that might be, so that they could pass safely on
So
that.
that will be the bicycle route essentially up and down that hill?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. We tried to keep them, one thing that they really wanted us to do was keep them out of the lane of travel, just because we really didn't look like we had enough width to get a full bike lane in there.
Yeah, makes sense.
Could you point out where, with your pointer, where is Mickey's Deli? I'm just having trouble with the orientation.
So we'll get to Mickey's Deli in the very next slide,
So we're
and I'll
not
show you
there
where it's
yet.
at.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
yes,
Will the bicycle pathway be identified? March?
it will not. It's considered a multi-use path, but it will not have a designated lane within that 10-foot sidewalk.
So the 10-foot sidewalk is from 1st to 7th, or the entire length of the
It is the
project?
entire length of the project from 1st Street all the way to the top of the hill at Skip Horse at C Street. Yes?
Well, this allowed you to do some code enforcement on the north side of Alder, because there's a couple of hedges across the courthouse where you can't hardly use much of the sidewalk at all. It'd be nice to see some code enforcement to get people to trim their vegetation back so you can actually use the sidewalk.
Yes, that will be a priority of ours, to make sure that that vegetation is trimmed and taken care of before we actually move forward with this project.
So the coming down the hill, then, I know that's maybe skipping ahead, so the bicycles will be at full throttle coming down along with pedestrians in that lane. Because, you know, they don't go slow down that hill.
That is true. Yes.
So there's no separation in that.
There is not a separation at this point.
And that is, and like pedestrians, I mean, people with bicycles are not considered a motor vehicle by any means. Is that what you're saying within your
Correct.
statute in Shelton?
That is correct. And through the funding agency, TIB, also defined this as a multi-use path. And Bob might be able to speak a little more to that aspect of it.
I think you said it correctly.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't bicycles considered vehicles? They're on the street, they have to obey vehicle rules.
Within a multi-use path, though, they are not.
So if you're coming down the hill to make a right turn, we have to have some way of seeing bicycles coming down at 30 miles an hour, crossing the crosswalk, and know that they're coming as we go down so they don't have to stop as they cross, what would that be, 7th?
Well, they would have to stop at 7th. They would have to abide by pedestrian rules, and that will be,
Well, I mean, if it's green light and you're going down the hill to make a right, and you have a bicycle on your right passing at 30 miles an hour down the hill, or whatever the legal speed limit is.
well, there will be some separation between them on this sidewalk here. There's a planter strip in between. So
Right.
when they come down to the intersection, they're going to have to obey the law just like everybody else does.
I understand.
So if there isn't a
If it's a
walk
green
signal
light,
on the crosswalk,
but if there is,
But if there isn't somebody making a right turn, you're gonna have to look at your right-hand side mirror to figure out there's a bicycle coming down from the hill.
It's like with any pedestrian. The pedestrians has a right of way in the crosswalk.
Pedestrians are like stable things. We're
Right.
talking about a bicycle going.
They have to adhere
pedestrians
to
don't
the
do 30 miles an
same
hour.
rules as the pedestrian does, and the traffic has to adhere to the pedestrians in the crosswalk. So if the
But I'm
bike is in the
talking about a
crosswalk,
safety issue,
and it's,
a visibility.
are bicycles supposed to walk through a crosswalk, or are they allowed to ride through a crosswalk?
oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I can answer
that's
that.
probably a question we should have had Darren Moody here, our
Yeah.
police chief, to answer.
Okay.
I
You
actually,
understand the question, the
yes,
concern?
I actually
Because we
did
have a
not.
6-foot planter, so now our rear view mirrors are looking down the side of our vehicle, but not necessarily, 16 feet over to the right.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a question we'll run past Chief Moody.
Safety, you're right.
Yes.
So that is something that we will ask him and we'll clarify before we move forward
Yeah.
with this.
Just may take some extra safety.
Yes, I think you had your hand up first.
Is there any possibility of, some places have like a walk area, and you'll see little footprints, and then to the other side of that same wide area, you'll see little bike marks, where they try to separate the pedestrians from the cyclists. Now, granted, that would still be an issue if the cyclists decided to go, neither of them give way, but at least it wouldn't get us pedestrians.
Sure.
It's something we can look at.
That's something that we can ask Transportation Improvement Board about if they've seen that. They're a big help. And also, one piece of this that I forgot to mention, Gray and Osborne are our engineering consultants, so we can also run that by them and get their feedback on that also. Yes?
Well, I just want to mention that it's been often used that they put in these things called speed bumps. And so if you were just to put some speed bumps in as you're going down the hill, bicycles know that they are there. They would automatically slow down before they get to the intersection. And of course, there's the Safe Streets program, which has a lot of grant money that you could reach into. And they might be interested in seeing the results of this. Perhaps a series of street bumps such as they use on the Burke-Gilman Trail.
So Complete Streets is something that we are striving for on this project, so that is certainly something that we're looking at.
And it's grant money.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, and they already have research, so you might, and answers kind of their question, because their thing is they don't want wildly running bicycles careening down across the intersection, and if the bicycle knows that there's gonna be a series of speed bumps along that, they'll never get over a certain speed limit. Of course, there's safe streets, and they've done studies on that.
Sure.
So good luck.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Yes.
I got 2 questions.
Sure.
I'd like to know how long this project's going to take from start to finish.
I think Bob can probably answer that better than I can.
I think we're looking at about 200 working days, which is 20 days a month, so about 10 months maybe at the most.
Okay, and my other question is, are they going to reestablish the landscaping to the capacity that it is prior to construction along Alder Street for residences or businesses?
Everything will be restored within the project limits, which is the right of way to road. So all the landscaping we're gonna do will be restored before the project's done. Is that what you're looking for?
Landscaping will be drastically improved within this corridor.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be nice.
So one other thing I failed to mention, pointing out, in this planter strip that we have running the entire distance of the project, that will be the location that PUD 3 will be installing your overhead lighting and also your pedestrian lighting. It's not actually defined in here, but that will be the spot where we have lighting. And what the proposal is right now, and maybe Justin or Coral can hit on this a little better, is an overhead light for the street and traffic, and then on the back side of the pole, a pedestrian light to light up the sidewalk. I don't know if Justin, do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. The city asked about our decorative street poles so that it looks similar to the nice look of Railroad Avenue. So not wood poles, but the nice black poles. Pole spacing and light type would be very similar to North 13th Street up by the hospital. We have some nice bright white LED lights that are good for roadway fixtures there. Those don't have the pedestrian arm out the back, but we would be looking for poles that have that ability to have an area light, if you will, on the back for the pedestrians. And then the street lighting would be the same as North 13th Street. Similar pole spacing, we're also looking at about 120 feet or so in between poles. Exact dimensions and locations will come when we get further than the 10% design. And it looks like it'll be meeting the RP8 roadway lighting standard. It's not a requirement for the project, but we're going to strive for that.
Got a question
Yes.
for you. Going up the hill, you guys take into consideration the roadbed shifting. It's already dropped 6 inches in the last 20 years. What are you guys going to do about that?
We will move up this project, and we will get to that, and I'll come back to that question when we get there.
Because I lived here all my life, and I've seen that hill slide more and more every year.
I promise I will get back to that question.
And
Yes.
also, second question, are you guys going to put any traffic lights in on that whole strip? You only got one. Are you going to put one there at Alder Street?
So I'll answer that question on the next slide also. Promise I'll get back to it. Yes.
As far as with the PUD, I appreciate all the surface lighting, and given the recent technological advances in LED lighting, I'm curious, given the Bolt decisions mandate that we daylight creeks, how hard would it be for the PUD to run an LED system through our existing culverts and illuminating our creeks during daylight hours? And I ask this because in order to get salmon to spawn from Shelton Creek all the way up to the east side of First Avenue where it's daylighted, a lot of this goes underground in culverts, and up until now it's been difficult for daylighting of creeks to occur. However, given recent technological advances, you have the ability now to put lights into a darkened passageway using LED technology and control the time so they are on during the daylight hours, thus fulfilling your obligation, or the state and the city's obligation regarding the Bolt decision requirement that you daylight salmon spawning greens. Have you given that any consideration? And I can't see that that'd be more expensive than what you're doing already. Thank you. Also, you could use solar cells to power this. They do that if you have to go away from a creek that's right next to a power source.
That is not a part of this project.
You're gonna cover Canyon Creek at certain points, making it so that for the next 10 years we are not going to be able. I assume there's a moratorium on penetrating the surface of your construction or doing something with this. Technology right now is up there where we can daylight it, and it's inexpensive. Why not incorporate that into this project? And also you get a lot of grant money from the Conservation District and Sea Grant, who's working with the Washington State University and the University of Washington, are already well along in their studies illuminating the migration and feeding habitats of salmon white.
So not something we've looked at with this project, but we could certainly can. Thank you. So moving from, this is really a rendering of what this project would look like. On the left-hand side is the existing roadway. On the right-hand side is a design of what really it would look like in the future when we're done with this project. So this is looking from 2nd Street, looking west towards the courthouse.
So back up to First. On the drawing it had.
So we're at First now.
Okay.
So at First Street, what we have right now is existing. We've got this slip lane with a free movement. We've got a stop sign, southbound traffic at Alder, and then you immediately run into a yield sign as you get through the intersection. We have identified that as a problem area, and our accident and crash data backs that up. So the existing proposal is to move to, and originally we talked about closing off this east side of First Street. That has now been taken out of the design. So what you would end up with is a straight left turn lane with a stop sign, and then a right turn lane onto First Street with a free movement on First Street north and south, and the addition of a left turn lane to not restrict traffic up the hill. So this is, at this time, the design that we are looking at for the First and Alder intersection. Yes?
I don't know if you've done a traffic count on San Joaquin, but I think you need to. That is the only in-town way off Capitol Hill. And when the traffic is heavy, particularly during the school time or morning time, the only way often you can get out onto North Cliff from San Joaquin is when people are stopped at the traffic light or the stop sign waiting, and someone will give you space to get in. Because it's a steady flow of traffic downhill, and if now it's a steady flow of traffic uphill too, it's going to be really hard to get off that intersection. And there's a lot of traffic up there.
I think at this point, this free movement up and down the hill is most likely going to improve that situation where we're not having that backup at the stop sign. So that is what we are looking at right now. We've got a traffic engineer also taking a look at that. WashDOT has reached out to us to take a look at what concepts we could come up with for this intersection. At this point, this is what we have come up with for this intersection. I'm not saying that it's the best option at this point. We are going to continue to study this and see if we have a better alternative to this configuration. Yes?
My name is Kathleen Lezay. I'm a homeowner on the corner of First Street and San Joaquin. And this woman's comments are absolutely right on, and I want to tell you why. Having owned that property for a series of years and done a lot of work on the outside, it's the property that has a fence around it, the landscaping. I put a new roof on, I painted that home. Maybe you know the property. When I bought it, it was a dilapidated piece of garbage. And I bought that home so I could improve something that looked good for the people in Shelton, because I was going to be here myself and I wanted to do something for the town. Since I have improved that property, hundreds of people have stopped by and said, thank you for improving the property, because now we don't have to say, turn right on San Joaquin at that piece of garbage. Now turn right at that pretty little home on that corner. What I want to tell you is all the years I've been working out there trying to improve the property, building a fence, painting the hound, doing the landscaping, the cars who come right through there on that freeway coming up from San Joaquin from First to Uptown, they go 50, 60 miles per hour. Many times they go so fast I have to fly back to protect myself. It is horrifying. There is no traffic control. The people that come from First Street and come from Birch fly up San Joaquin going 30, 40 miles an hour. They fishtail up that street. There is a walkway behind my home. It is a walkway for people who live at the top of the hill who come down to walk into downtown area. This includes mothers with strollers, mothers with little children in tow, men, elderly, and able-bodied who have to run across San Joaquin to get to the safety of the other side of that street, or get across on First. It is horrifying. I have nearly seen people killed on multiple occasions. I, who sometimes park on Birch and come across to my home, have had a run for my life from people in their vehicles speeding in excess miles of 45 and 50 miles per hour. I have gone to the police and I said, this is the wild, wild west. It is dangerous for pedestrians. It is dangerous for motorists. There has so far been no satisfactory response. When I see that there is going to be a thoroughfare from First up the hill, uninhibited, I am horrified. I would like to see some way to calm the traffic that speeds up that hill uninhibited by law enforcement or any kind of a physical barrier like a speed bump. The traffic, I would like to see somebody anybody, come and stand in the front of my house for 1/2 of a day, and you will be horrified at the volume and the speed and the dangerousness of the traffic that goes unimpeded up San Joaquin and First. I would like to see that addressed for the safety of the pedestrians and the citizens of this community. And look at the area that comes behind my home that puts people out on a dangerous walkway into San Joaquin. The city owns that property. I would like to improve it and put steps down so that people can walk with their strollers or pedestrians can walk down without slipping on rocks into the street. I would like to improve it, but I have been advised not to. It is dangerous. Somebody is going to get killed. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And I would like to see the city responsibly address the safety issues associated with that wild, wild west street, the pedestrian walkway behind my property, and I would like to see some kind of traffic calming device that protects our citizens. And so I would like that incorporated to anything that you do. I'm simply saying there is a serious safety issue. It cannot be ignored. It must not be ignored in this plan. Something needs to happen to stop that traffic from running up that hill at excessive speeds. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I failed to mention one person when I was going through introductions. Ryan, our city manager, has been an integral part of what we are trying to do with this also. So I apologize for leaving Ryan out in the back of the room. Yes.
Is this still a state highway then? It is still designated as a state highway as it was before?
It is not.
It is not.
State highway.
Okay, that's totally gone at this point in
Yes,
time.
that is
Okay.
true. Yeah.
Is it still going to be open to truck traffic then?
It is at this
Okay,
point.
so we have 11 foot wide, and we have 40 foot plus chip trucks trying to maneuver around that corner.
That's right.
To go towards Simpson or whatever is left of like the mill
That's right.
of area with, trailers possibly with logs or chip trucks or whatever. Do you feel that they would be able to stay within those lanes and make that right turn without that sweeping right turn?
Like I mentioned before, this is early design.
I understand, I'm just saying that that's kind of, I have a motor home that isn't that big, and if I tow a car behind,
Yep.
I know, I'm like, wow, cool, I've got a nice right turn, but if I have to make a right turn there, I know that I'll more likely have to either pull over into the left turn lane to make that right turn without coming into opposing traffic, or I would have to go into opposing traffic to make that turn. And that is always going to be an issue because we do have a lot of recreational vehicles along with truck traffic in this town.
We have gotten traffic counts that include how many oversized vehicles go through that intersection, and our traffic engineer and our consultants are taking a look at that to
perfect.
come up with a design for this.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would mention one other thing. You have crosswalks drawn in on 3 of the crossings. There is none across North Cliff. One of the things I learned when I moved here and had to take a driving test is that there is an implied crosswalk at every intersection, and there's a lot of foot traffic along the north side of that intersection that goes from the hill to the little shopping center.
Yeah,
So we
it's a good
need a
point.
paved crosswalk.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, yes.
Quick question on the turn lane. There's currently a left turn lane going down First on Highway 3. going from the intersection, you merge, and then if you want to take Highway 3 towards Allen.
Yes.
So that will be like a half and half. Half of it will be the third lane, half of it will be this turn lane, and half of it will be the Highway 3 turn lane.
I believe you've got enough separation, if I'm hearing you correctly, what intersection you're talking about. You're talking kitty corner, the backside of ProBuild?
Yes.
So you've got enough separation there between those two turn lane pockets that you will have some separation between the two.
Okay.
They won't be a continuous turn lane going either way.
Either way, but it'd be
Well,
pretty
actually,
close.
I gotta agree with them. I said, that just doesn't work. I walk it all the time. You get like one of those 40-foot-long chip trucks, and he wants to get out on Highway 3, so he comes down North Olympic Highway there. He finally waits, he gets on, he can't turn straight into a left turn lane. He has to get out a little bit towards ProBuild there in front of Subway. And while all the other traffic's waiting to go the other direction, so he's got a little time, and all the traffic coming down the hill backs up. Now the people trying to go up the hill, they can't go because this 40-foot chip truck is stuck in line. No, it doesn't work. Sorry, no, it doesn't. I agree with that. I've been out there a lot, it doesn't.
So as I mentioned, we are looking at all, yes.
I'm sorry you decided there's not room for a roundabout.
Since Marilyn brings it up, can we have a show of hands on who would be completely opposed to some sort of traffic circle?
What size?
Large enough to get through.
A large?
Yeah, certainly it would be a full-size something.
Would it include San Joaquin and everything, or would San Joaquin still?
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. If you wouldn't mind just raising your hands again if you are completely opposed to a traffic circle in that location.
Okay.
So,
who's in favor? There's too many
and how
trucks.
many are in favor of some sort of traffic calming and traffic circle instead of this configuration?
Different from a traffic circle.
We're all in
Good, thank you. Appreciate that. That is certainly something that we did
Four-way
look at.
stop would work too.
That is certainly something that we've looked at also. But yeah, a traffic circle has been mentioned there. We have taken a look at that. At this point, it doesn't appear that it will fit there. Like I said before, we've got our traffic engineer and our consultants along with WashDOT taking a look at that. They have also offered to do some preliminary design for us to see if we could fit one in there. So all of those options are still on the table. So moving from First Street, this is the courthouse. So on the left-hand side, you see the old configuration. On the right is the proposed configuration. And if you notice, one big thing, one big change is that there is no parking at the courthouse on Alder Street. That is proposed to be eliminated with some mitigation for that on the north side of the road at 4th and 5th. Right now, there is a large planter area on both of those roadways between Alder and Birch, which would be moving north. So what we have talked with the county about, and we've had a few conversations with them of how to actually create some more parking for them around the courthouse. So on this north side area over on this side, between Alder and Birch, we would have nose-in angled parking created on both of those roadways, with most likely 2 ADA stalls located closest to the intersection at Alder, and then ADA ramps to cross to make it easier to get into the courthouse. So at this point, that is the proposal. We've also talked to them about improving their gravel parking lot that is on Cedar?
I think it's Cedar.
Is it Cedar? Cedar, where the old church used to be, right across from the sheriff's department. So we have been in talks with them.
That'd be like a paved, stormwater retention and all that.
Partnering with them in a way that we can get that parking lot up to city standards, which would be pavement, landscaping, and current stormwater requirements. So that is a conversation that we are having with them at this point, and they are open to those ideas. So that is very good news to us. And the reason for elimination of parking on Alder Street, and I'll throw this back into Bob's court here, it is city standard that we do not allow on-street parking. So with a major arterial, so not that we have done a very good job in the past of actually following city standard at this point. We know we've got an issue there. Crash data supports it, of these folks that are at the courthouse backing out into traffic. So at this point, we would really like to eliminate those known problems that we have throughout this corridor. So Bob, do you have anything to add as far as city standard goes on
No,
that?
it's standard arterials aren't allowed parking, so that's one of the reasons for.
Yes.
You will need a pedestrian push-button operated cross light at that, if you're putting all of the parking on one side of Alder and the courthouse on the other.
I'm going to pass this one over to Danette. We have been in talks with MTA. I believe they have some funding at certain bus stops, so I'm going to pass this off to Danette.
Since there will be a bus stop close to that crosswalk, then MTA is able to support with flash trucks and things like that. And that'll be part of
That'll be like we have at 6th and Railroad, maybe.
Correct. Yes, in the back?
Is this going to be a real fix, or is this going to be a temporary thing like you've done with Railroad and lights and the one by Safeway? Is this going to be a standard? Is it going to be a final? Or, I mean, when you finally come up with this, or are we going to, 2 years down the line, yank out something and put something else in?
That is why we are here tonight. This is not something that we want to go back and change, so we want to get it right the first time. I think what you've seen in the past is a trial and error situation with really limited funds that we had to work with. If you came in late, you saw at the original, or the start of this presentation, the funding sources that were all combined, almost a $5 million project. So we hope to address all of those issues and get it right the first time, and really that is why we wanted to reach out to everybody and get their feedback so that we could get it right the first time. So moving up this corridor, this is the configuration, really what you just saw in the last slide. So the courthouse would be located in this area. So you'll notice that 10-foot sidewalk that basically cuts off that parking for them. And this area is really what we were talking about before for on-street parking. This is 5th. We can't quite see 4th Street down here, but paving a strip on this side of the road, one side or the other. I think actually 5th is on this side, and doing some nose-in angled parking with a couple of ADA stalls closest to the intersection, and then ADA ramps crossing Alder Street. And the ADA ramp for the courthouse is located on Alder Street. So what the thought is right now is just trying to make that pedestrian movement a lot easier across that roadway.
And the lane width there, it says 14, that it's now down to 11, or is that 14?
11s are the proposed widths at this point. And that is to provide some traffic calming and some slowing of those vehicles. So moving up, this is the intersection moving up to 7th Street. This is 6th. And again, eliminating parking at Mason County Building 8, which is their permit center. And right now, the proposal to eliminate that and mitigate that with some on-street parking on 6th. And their ADA ramp also comes off of Alder Street to if you are familiar with that building, it's a 2-story building with two parking lots down below. And they do not have an elevator in that building. So to get ADA accessibility, they're coming right now off of Alder Street. So looking at this right now, there is no ADA parking along Alder existing. So creating some ADA parking on this side would make a fairly easy movement across this roadway to some ADA ramps here and directly into the building. So we're hoping that that satisfies Mason County and also the ADA public out there. So moving through the intersection, the traffic signal at 7th Street would be a new signal. It would be upgraded. It would not be the old style signals that are hanging off of the wires. It would actually be standards that those signals would be attached to, something like what you see at 7th and Railroad. So brand new traffic signal and traffic signal cabinet to move traffic through that intersection. And then we move up to 8th Street, moving up the hill. This is really where Danette and MTA come into play. They voiced a want for a bus pull-off for the library. So the proposal is at this point to block off 8th Street and make some on-street parking. We've heard some concerns from the library that they don't have enough parking within their lot. So making this a cul-de-sac at the end of 8th Street with some on-street angled parking on 8th and closing off 8th Street and creating a full bus stop. And Danette, do you want to elaborate on kind of what that would look like?
So our plan is then we would put in a shelter similar to what you see up on Wallace Leland by Walmart, and a larger shelter with lighting and sidewalk up to the library for those who are on, and that would only be served by our fixed route. So if you're still in the need of not being able to go up the hill, we have our dial ride, of course, to help with that. But for those that are able to use fixed route, they'll still be in a nice sidewalk for traveling up to the library, and it'll be well lit. So in the evening, if you're waiting for the bus, it'll be much more safer than it is right at the moment. So we do stop there, but it's dark. It's lighting at night. So. And the other side, we still are kind of working on how that will work coming down the hill, where exactly we will be able to stop, and we're working with the city on a plan for that.
Yes.
Coming down off the hill by the bus stop there will be a left-hand lane, turn lane to go to the library then?
There will not. One thing that we really wanted to eliminate was this cross-traffic turning movement.
No, I mean,
Being said at 7.
Oh, it's 7. Yes, certainly.
Yeah, okay.
I guess we don't show the intersection of 7. I apologize, but yes, you will see is it proposed to have a turn lane called?
Yes, and shown on the map.
Okay.
7 older, yeah.
Yes. And one thing really that we really wanted to try to do with closing off 8th Street, and it just really worked out, MTA wanting to put in a bus pull-off there, was to eliminate the stop here at 8 for traffic trying to turn across traffic on and crossing a double yellow into 8th Street. And I think that is a very good way to make that happen. So moving up the hill, this is the cross section that you see existing on the top. So right now we've got 3 12-foot lanes with the large Jersey barrier separating traffic from pedestrians. What is proposed, and this is a little off, this is still a work in progress early on in this stage, but the 10-foot sidewalk, and we have heard the pedestrian public voice a concern that they maybe don't feel comfortable not having this Jersey barrier to separate traffic. So the concept that we have come up with our consultants is the 10-foot sidewalk with a 6-inch curb, and then a fairly deep 4-to-1 swale with some hardscape river rock type material. This is also where the PUD's lights would go and the light standards would go into. And the thought process through this is to eliminate this ugly Jersey barrier and replace it with some low maintenance landscaping and hardscape. But what that does is means you would have to jump that 6-inch curb, go down through a about a 2-foot deep swale to get up to the sidewalk on the other side. So you would need a very large vehicle to make that movement through that swale. Yes, I think your hand is up first.
One concern is ice and snow. I mean, if it's ice and snow, none of that's gonna stop anything from going through.
Well, actually, you would still have to go, you would have to go over a 6-inch curb.
I'm saying, if there's snow
Yeah.
build up, and if there's ice built up, what's 6 inches? You can still have the vehicle go over that. And it's just one of those concerns. I mean, maybe you're not gonna have pedestrians out there anyway, but to have such a small barrier for human life is.
What's so objectionable about a guardrail? I mean, I don't think they're that unesthetically pleasing. We have the one going down, from top of Capitol Hill down on the side there, you know.
You're not separating necessarily traffic from pedestrians in that area. And if you really look at our other hill sections within Shelton, Northcliffe gets quite a bit of pedestrian traffic. There is not any separation between that sidewalk and the traveled way, other than a 6-inch curb. And also on Olympic Highway South, we have not had any issues, and speeds are about the same on Olympic Highway South, and it is also just a 6-inch curb with a sidewalk abutting the actual traveled way. And we have not had any issues on either one of those roadways. Yes?
Well, I was just looking at your picture at 7th and Alder. It looks like you've made it worse than it is now for school buses, because it doesn't look very school bus friendly in the picture.
It may not be. That was an early concept of some bump outs. I'm guessing that's what you're talking about.
Well, right now.
And the movement around those. Yes, that is something that Bob, as our city engineer, and the consultants are certainly looking at. Bob actually looked at that earlier this evening and said we may need to eliminate those bump outs. So we do hear your
Railroad
concerns.
is almost impossible to take a right turn now.
We do hear your concerns.
Each one of those intersections for the turning radius for buses and trucks, like you had mentioned earlier as well. So they all have to be looked at during the design phase.
So you're calling it a swale, but you say it's gonna be hardscape, but that's not gonna include like grasses and things like that?
It will have some landscaping in it. It'll be low maintenance.
Okay, so that'll be watered then?
No, it will not. It will
This
not be
a
irrigated.
rain garden type of thing then?
It will not be a rain garden. It will not take any stormwater. We can't take any stormwater on that hillside. We've already, as the gentleman in the back mentioned, and I told you I would get back to your question.
So
You'll have to
that'll
remind
be-
me of your other question when we get to that hill.
So it'll be paved underneath
It
with
will
the
not be
rock
paved.
on top?
It will not be paved.
Okay.
It will be lined and have some kind of hardscape on top of it, but there will not be any curb cut. So really, the only water that it's going to get is the water that falls out of the sky. We're not going to take any that goes through a
So the
curb cut.
sidewalk's gonna slough off over the side then, or is it gonna go run down the sidewalk
Actually,
to
the sidewalk will
storm?
slope towards the swale. It's got to, typically goes away from that hill. We don't want to go down the hill, so we want to bring it
Right.
back to that. So you can have some water there, but the sidewalk could be.
So you're gonna basically use the existing storm water system on that hill?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So back to your original question was, what do we do about that hillside? Right now, if you noticed in the last week, we've been out doing some boring to identify soil types and what we've got for erosion on that hillside. And there's been multiple concepts of how to hold that hillside up, some soil anchors underneath that roadway. And was there anything else that's been mentioned?
They had a couple ideas, consultant had a couple ideas of some fixes potentially to
Well,
adhere to that.
The concern is not only the upper bank there on the north side, but on the south side, going down toward Luke Field, that whole hill is moving. Every year it moves a quarter of an inch to a half inch. I know, I've been here for 76 years and I know how that hill's moving. And then the upper hill's sliding too.
We have been monitoring that hill. We've been taking survey data on that the last couple of years. So we got some information of what that is, plus now we look at the soils.
Because it's not only going down, but it's also tipping toward the upper bank.
And we are addressing that. Yes.
Your drawing only has 2 travel lanes where now
I
there
was
are
getting to it.
3. When you do, are you considering decreasing the speed limit down the hill to 25 because that would increase pedestrian safety as well?
So as Marilyn mentioned, we were just getting to it. One of the biggest changes within this project is right now, if you'll see this configuration, you've got 3 12-foot travel lanes, 1 down the hill, 2 up the hill. And the proposal at this point, and again, this goes back to the funding sources for traffic calming, would be to go to 1 lane down the hill and 1 lane up the hill. This is really, this 3-lane road is a holdover from when this was a state highway and the truck traffic that we had. And at this point, this is the proposal, is to go to 2 12-foot lanes with a center broken divider in the middle. And we're trying to get this, right now it shows a 3-foot center divider that's painted. We are trying to go to a 5-foot wide actual center island with a raised 6-inch curb with some hardscape and some low maintenance landscaping in there. And what that would provide with a broken center island would be, the proposal is to go with something that's equal distance with brakes and center islands. What that would provide is up the hill. It gives the ability that if you do have a stalled vehicle, you could pull into between the brakes in that so that traffic could get by. And it also provides for emergency vehicles to get by. They would have to go into the uphill lane to get by, but they could go between the brakes to get around a stalled vehicle or some kind of emergency that may happen on that hill section. The other thing that it does is, this is the artist rendering of what it would look like. It is now painted. We've moved away from that somewhat to the concept of a broken center island. The other thing that we're trying to prevent is the coal loop accesses. There are 2 of them, so if you know the neighborhood off to the south of that roadway, once you get up through the S-curves, I think there's 4 or 5 houses in that area. We're trying to eliminate that cross-traffic turn. So right now you've got traffic coming up the hill that tries to turn across that double yellow into those 4 or 5 houses. We would locate a couple of center raised islands to eliminate any possibility of turning from the uphill movement, turning into that small neighborhood there. So those folks would, if they're coming up the hill, would have to go to the top of the hill and turn around and come back down the hill to get into those. So really with 1 lane going up the hill, we can't have traffic stopping to make that turning movement. And we've got some crash data there that supports that effort in that turning movement. Yes?
Would the turn onto 13th remain as it is, or do you have other plans?
We're going to get to that one in just a second.
Could I ask for a little clear my mind about what this traffic calming is? Is it deterring people from traveling on the road, or is it trying to stop them? I mean, what is that trying to do? I don't quite understand what the concept is completely.
Traffic calming is a term they utilize to create kind of a side friction and narrow the lanes up to make it look like you're in a narrow passage. So it gets you to have a tendency to slow down. The research studies have been developed to get to that point where narrow lanes, slow traffic, or you have curves up next to it, has a tendency, the traffic does have a tendency to slow down. So that's the intent.
So just try to keep people within the speed limit without having to be monitored.
Correct.
What are other methods of calming traffic?
Well, typically you don't want to put speed bumps in a main arterial road, so that's one thing you really wouldn't want to do. But the curves, narrow lanes, the islands, like you had talked about, are a couple options in this kind of scenario.
Just a quick question on North Cliff, which is rather similar to Alder, except I think the traffic, I've walked on both a million times, seems worse on North Cliff. What would you recommend to slow the traffic on North Cliff, both going up the hill and down?
you can turn it raised, we're gonna evaluate that, because we understand that the traffic coming off there with that free, no stop now is gonna be picking up traffic speed, so we have to take a look at that as well.
And if you wouldn't mind just leaving your information, we can address some of those issues that are outside of this project. Brooke Kiltz is in the back, and she can take your information, and we can certainly look into that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yes?
Are you aware of how many people break down up just around that corner?
Yes. That is the reason for that raised center island and the brakes within it, so that if you do have a stalled vehicle within that section, you could pull either into the middle, or we could divert traffic around them in those brakes. So
I didn't realize it was that big.
yeah, so that's why we're trying to get it. Right now, it's proposed to be a 3-foot wide island. We're trying to get it to 5 or 6 feet. And really the way we're trying to do that is, originally it was proposed that there were 2-foot buffers between the curb and the fog line. We're going to reduce those down to 1 foot and gain a couple of feet to put in that center, so that those are a little wider, so that you could pull into that for really a safe zone for a stalled vehicle. Yes?
Hi, I think that Marilyn had mentioned about the traffic speed on the Alder Hill and how it changes, I believe, at 7th Street to 25 miles per hour. And I think he followed up that the traffic would be the same as Olympic Highway South, which is 30 miles an hour. So would it remain 30 miles an hour going up and down Alder till 7th Street? Or would it be reduced more going up the hill to?
We are not proposing any speed changes at this point. We're hoping that is something that we can look at after this is completed. If we see some speeding going on, or just too much speed traveling on that roadway, but we're feeling right now that this traffic calming will take care of that issue.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
That was my question.
Okay, thanks. So moving up past, going the wrong way. So we get to the hill section through the S-turns, and the next proposed change, A Street, which is at the top, just as you get through the S-turns, is a gravel road. It would be this road here. It's the gravel road that leads up into the neighborhood off of 13th Street, and we would propose to close that off. It's a very poorly maintained gravel road at this point. It takes a lot of beating throughout the winter time with traffic trying to pull up there and hitting that with a very small apron. So we don't see a lot of need for that roadway at this point. This neighborhood can be accessed off of 13th to get into that, which also eliminates traffic coming out and trying to turn onto this limited sight distance roadway at some speeds at 30 miles an hour, which probably don't support those sightlines. So moving up the hill to B Street, question we had earlier. So the proposal is to eliminate this ugly yellow triangle that we've got there now, and adding a right turn lane to get out of that traveled lane up the hill with the movement onto B Street, and the potential with Mason Conservation District of doing some kind of stormwater rain garden up in this area, and eliminating this. We're proposing to move this downhill lane, turning onto Olympic Highway North, move it downhill just a little bit to increase the sight lines, and also position it so that you can't make this cross traffic turn onto B Street off of Olympic Highway North.
Are you still accessing from whatever street that is, you're still accessing?
North 13th, yeah, so to be able to come down North 13th and make the left, go down the hill.
But
Is
you
that what you're asking?
can't from Olympic Highway.
You can't make the left from Beacon.
You will not be able to make a left-hand turn, cross-traffic turn, heading southbound onto B Street.
But how about from B Street, you can turn left off of B Street onto,
Yes.
B Street, we will not eliminate that movement.
so you can still turn left.
Correct.
Okay.
And what we really did was by positioning this and sliding this lane down the hill a little bit, is we created some better sight lines, not only down the hill, but up. If you're familiar with this area, right now it hugs this side here, and there's some fairly large bushes and some landscaping, some residential landscaping in here that make it very difficult to see up the hill. So by shifting it down, we're hoping that that increases these sight lines up and down the hill.
Like we said earlier, that intersection, that radius there might be a little bit shallower than what a truck or a bus might be able to get through. So your concern was raised earlier, we're going to have to evaluate that intersection as well, make sure that radius can handle trucks as well as buses.
What's the difference between turning left onto the Olympic Highway onto B and turning left off of B on the Olympic Highway?
Right in, right out.
Well, right now you've got a stop sign here.
Right.
And what you would be doing with one single lane of traffic up the hill, if you stop here to make this turning movement, you're going to be stopping all of this traffic behind you also. So that's really what we're trying to eliminate
by Napa.
Is this stopping mid-block.
How do you open it for people to turn left from B, but close it to keep people turning left from the Olympic Highway?
To go to their house.
Well, this stop bar, or this gore line doesn't quite show accurately what it actually is going to do. So this really shifts up and tries to cut off. You technically could still break the law and make this turning movement across this double yellow and across this gore line, but this is going to shift uphill so that really this is just a movement, a free movement onto B Street off of this turn lane. This is actually going to be slid up to about right here and in here. So technically it's going to be illegal to turn and cross this double yellow further down the hill. So you're going to have a break in it here, but it won't, positioning wise, it will not be legal to turn across that.
But it's legal to turn across it from coming down.
Well, the position will be, the break will be further up the hill for this traffic to make this movement.
Coming down the hill, coming out of the neighborhood.
The people living on Beach Street are gonna have to go east to get around, because
Go up a block.
you won't be able to come on to Olympic Highway and go into town for Beach Street.
Well, if you're coming down the hill, C Street is a much better option to turn onto. At the top of the hill, the sight lines are much better. You're not delaying traffic there, because there is a center turn lane heading southbound. So, yes.
Why not just eliminate that whole thing and have everything at the top of the hill?
Put a stop light at the top of the
There's
hill.
enough volume going up and down to the hospital from that right turn, and it'll cause a lot of impacts more than shifting the traffic to C Street that's really not built for that. So the movement's going to probably stay the way it is, not hinder people getting up to B Street, up to the hospital or the area they live in.
And we have done traffic counts and also run this by our traffic engineer, and the closing, because it was proposed to close that roadway off also, and we thought otherwise of it once our traffic engineer took a look at it and studied it. Yes, I think you had your hand up.
How about right in, right out?
Right in.
Right in, going up the hill, right out, coming down B, not crossing Olympic Highway at all.
So, like I stated when we first started this, that is something that we've looked at. This is not set in stone by any means whatsoever. We have to give a little bit of time. This is very early on in this design. Our traffic engineers and consultants are taking a look at it, and that may be something that comes out of it ultimately. Yes?
It seems contradictory to talk about traffic calming, and yet at the same time to cut off what are neighborhood access points so that people can go straight through without having to stop for a left turn.
Well, if you look at these that we're proposing, they are illegal at this point. We're just making it so that they can't actually break the law.
But I think you have to consider that if you make it too hard to use that street, that's the way off the hill to downtown.
But we're not proposing to eliminate that at this point.
No, but if you, it just seems like you're cutting neighborhoods off, and at this end of it, you're trying to make it a fast-moving arterial that doesn't stop and you're trying to slow at other places? And
We're actually traffic calming through this area, and by cutting A Street off and eliminating this, this movement, when you get to B Street, so if you don't go on A Street, just back down the block, you would turn here onto Jefferson and you would be at the same point.
And I'm
So we're not
presuming
cutting off
that
neighborhoods.
you're counting on pedestrians crossing there.
No, absolutely not.
That's an intersection, and it's an implied crosswalk, and there is no other way for people who live on B Street to get to the sidewalk.
C Street, so as we move up the hill, we get to C Street. That's also been a conversation with MTA. They have a bus stop up towards Skipworth and locating a rapid flasher at the top of the hill at C Street, which has ADA ramps and also sidewalks. So it's not out of the question to walk a block to get to a safe intersection to cross. We would discourage any pedestrian traffic moving across Olympic Highway north in that section.
But it's legal.
I think you had your hand up first.
You said you were gonna go all the way to Skipworth.
Correct.
So is there any talk about having a light right there? You know how the crest of the hill goes? Having a light right there by Skipworth, like a big bright light, like maybe a flash. Because
roadway lighting?
when I'm coming home in the gloam, there are so many young people going, little kids that go across right there.
I'm gonna pass this one off to our experts at the PUD, because street lighting is not my specialty.
We can add more light there if the city would like us to. We got lights.
The design includes lights at the intersection as well.
We haven't been to Skipworth yet, though, that's coming, right?
So, question in the back, and if you had
Yeah, my concern was when you're coming off Jefferson Street, you're crossing B Street right there, the traffic coming up from Olympic Highway, the sight line there is very poor. And so I live back in that area right there, and every time I come up, I have to stop, I roll down the window, I turn my radio off, and I listen to make sure there's no cars coming. I was hoping maybe we can get like a convex mirror or something to where we can actually see the traffic coming up, because it's very dangerous coming out of the alleyway, or on that gravel alleyway right there.
I appreciate your comments, and if you could give your information also to Brooke, we certainly can get back to you. I think the thing to understand and keep in mind with this project is we can't fix every issue that we have off of this project. This project is really Alder Street, but not eliminating some of those other issues that we've got a block or two away. So, but we can certainly take a look at that. I know where you're at, and I know the issues that you have there. And it is a concern, and it has been for a while. So really coming up with a fix for that, we're certainly taking a look at it. But if you would like us to get back to you, you can certainly leave your information with Brooke.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
Also, to stop people from, pedestrians from crossing the B Street, you just put up a sign that says, crossing prohibited, then it's against the law. That's how you, in Washington State, that's how you eliminate crosswalks, is you tell them you can't cross there.
Yeah, and this is all stuff that our consultants are certainly taking a look at, and we'll have recommendations on. Thank you, though.
Yeah, if I can say on that, where it says proposed improvements and you cut off part of an existing roadway, wouldn't that be an appropriate place to maybe put in a bus stop since it's already there? That way you'd have basically, as the buses, MTA comes up the hill, they pick up people on the bottom, and if people want to get off right there and continue on up Olympic Avenue, instead of having to follow 13th all the way down towards the hospital and doing the whole loop. I'm just saying, I'm just suggesting you look into it as you're going out there, because it's already there.
I guess that would be a conversation of whether a bus stop would work in that area traffic-wise and with safety. We do have a bus stop up by Skipworth.
Going the other way.
Yes, it is, but certainly, and I think he's about our route there, so maybe that's the.
The north loop goes up that way, going up the hill. Some people don't want to go out that far. You drop them, now that you're doing all this wonderful improvement, and you direct them up the street a little bit past Napa to where they can cross there safely at C Street. It kind of tied together with the illumination the lady was asking for, directs everybody up to where they get.
That's a good point, and we can look at that in our conversation of having something on that side.
So we are to the end of this presentation, but we certainly would love to field any additional questions that we haven't hit on so far.
Just for clarification on that last picture, the Olympic Highway would take traffic from B Street up and off of Olympic Highway on. That's all that design allows. Is that true?
This movement would be, really, you're just improving these movements. The only one that you're eliminating is this cross-traffic turn heading southbound on Olympic Highway North. Everything else is staying exactly, proposed to stay exactly the way it is now.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just for clarification, to make sure I understand, when you get to C Street, you're going to have a left turn lane in the middle, so that people making a left going towards what should be that bridge over 101 at some point in time.
That is correct. We actually didn't include a slide at C Street. At Skipworth, correct. Going up the hill northbound, it is proposed to have the through traffic lane and then a center turn lane with a left turn across onto C Street. That is correct.
And that's really important because there's so many people that go down that street right now because there's two churches at the end.
Sure. Yes.
Craig, this slide that's two slides after the pie chart, this one of Alder Street looking west, are they proposing that you cut down the trees on the right side, those old beautiful trees on the right side of the slide? And
Yes, they are.
And replanting with trees, with root areas, so we don't have damage to our sidewalks. So we're putting the trees back that were taken out.
As a point of reference, do you know the lane width on North Cliff and Olympic Highway South? What's the lane width?
I don't know. I don't know if Bob knows exactly. I don't want to guess at that because I don't know off the top of my head.
My guess would be 12 foot, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This grant funding that you're hoping to get, it's not available for just paving existing streets, paving streets that have never been paved, that are still gravel?
It's not. Through TIB, Transportation Improvement Board, these grants are designated, at least the one that we are targeting, are designated for, but they are designated routes.
Federal highway designated routes.
Yes, and luckily in Shelton we have quite a few of them. Most counties only have one or two. I think we've actually got about 10 of them, but they actually have to be these designated routes that they have already defined to apply for the particular grant that we are going after. There are some that are just paving projects, arterial preservation projects, and we actually have applied for one of those for Turner Street, also for about $500,000. So
the city's got a program to try to pave the unpaved streets using the TDD money.
residential roads, at this point, we have committed to paving 20 blocks a year with Transportation Improvement Board, not Improvement Board,
Benefit
Benefit District money. Way too many acronyms, way too many letters at this point. But yes, we've committed to 20 blocks a year in residential neighborhoods, and then we will continue to go after grant funding to fund just some of those paving projects like we have proposed on Turner Street. I think Gary had his.
I'd just like to make a comment, it's really nice to see the city trying to, do these types of improvements and having a forum like this. Thank you very much for this. But, I've had a business on Mountain View for almost 30 years, and I watched so much work being done downtown. It's nice to see it starting to work towards us. After we paid for an LID up there, it seemed that that's where the buck stopped, But But thank you for that. But I do have one small concern about this, traveling up the hill past the library. And this, you know, I've watched over the years, you know, that I've had a business here, traveling up and down there with emergency vehicles, having to travel there. I'm really, really concerned the fact that I don't think that even without the evidence of an accident on that hill with emergency vehicles trying to pass through there, there is really no place for people to get out of their way. There is no way. I mean, if you put a centered island, I mean, with the brakes is great, but I mean, I've seen that hill, people coming down when it's a busy school day, it's a Friday, it's shrimping season or something like that, and where people are stopped from the bottom of that hill easily all the way up to where the housing units are that you're talking about. We've all seen it backed up that far without any accidents in place. So now how does an emergency vehicle get past that if you have an island and you have traffic coming up the hill, which is also equally dense? It's something we need to be concerned about.
We'll take a look at that, and that's one of the issues we're talking about.
It's going to be tough.
So,
It's going to be really, really hard.
Yes, sorry, I think you had your hand up first.
That was actually my question as well. Is there any thought to the backup that happens coming down Olympic Highway North, trying to take a right onto 7? I live in that housing complex that's right off of Olympic Highway North. In the last week, I've seen it backed up at least to my house, if not to B Street, 3 times this week. So, are we doing something about traffic? I'm a little nervous about taking a lane out through there.
The signal is an older signal, and that's part of the issue as well. So when we replace it with a new signal, that might help somewhat. We'll have to take a look at the spacing and the timing of that signal.
So we're not proposing to eliminate a lane at 7th Street.
No, I understand that. I understand that, but I've heard multiple concerns about extra traffic going up Northcliffe. If you take one lane that no longer goes up Olympic Highway North, Northcliffe is going to get more traffic.
Sure.
So, you know, up by San Joaquin, but I've seen it back up all the way to B Street coming down that hill, trying to take left on the 7.
It was past C Street last week.
Yeah, so there's nothing in the plan to alleviate that at all.
We will take a look at that. Thank you. Yes.
What are the traffic impacts during the construction phase? Are you going to be blocking off that S-curve entirely for the 10-month period?
To make this as cost efficient as possible, there will be some full road closures. They will not be for extended periods of time. They will be periodic throughout this construction period. But flaggers and traffic control are very expensive, so the more road closures that we can do, I don't know if there'll be as much on the hill section as opposed to between 1st and 7th. You may see some more there where we've got some better movements where we can direct traffic around those. But that may be a possibility that you may run into some actual road closures.
If you remember Northcliffe, in the project we did there was some closures and limits of traffic and trying to encourage you to use other routes. So we'll probably use that as well and encourage you not to come down the street and use Northcliffe at this time during the stage of the construction. It helps the cost to help the contractor continue to work freely and save some money.
Sorry, the gentleman in the back, I think you were next.
Talking about the subject of traffic coming down Northcliffe, I go up that direction multiple times a day. I work for the school district, so I see all kinds of different traffic at different times a day. If you're talking about closing Alder Street and that S-curve, when you get to about 4:15 to somewhere around 5:30, close to 6 o'clock, traffic is back almost all the way up that hill, halfway at least to the hospital area. And if you end up closing Alder Street, that's going to become almost unimpassable. Now, unfortunately, I came into this conversation somewhat late, so am I to understand that there's going to be pass-through right down here at the bottom of Northcliffe? Basically, I'm gathering, I heard somebody say no stopping coming down the hill, is that correct?
There'll be a free movement north and southbound.
Well, that may stop part of it, but then it backs all the way up through town.
Yes.
As I process this and after I'm home and all that, is there a written comment period that we can do so that we can, you know, since I've you know, I want to take it over to my husband. Is there something that we can, if we have any other suggestions or questions,
So
is there-
likely our communications officer just stepped out of the room, but most likely we will set something up so that we can take in comments for an extended period of time so that we can address some of those maybe that we didn't get out here or somebody that couldn't attend this meeting.
There's some cards in the back, if you'd like to fill out some questions and drop them off now, or you can also drop them off later in the week if they come to you. And you can also send us an email on the Public Works website. There's an email address there.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I know you keep saying this is preliminary. Will there be another meeting to know what the next part of the process is going to be?
I don't know that we have gotten to look that far ahead at this point, depending on where we end up going. If it varies too much from this design, most likely we will have another meeting. But if the concept stays pretty true to what we've got here now proposed, I don't know necessarily that there would be another need for a meeting, but certainly if it changes drastically, we will certainly open that back up. And Andy Arnez will certainly get the word out. He is, like I said, he stepped out. He is doing our communications, so we will certainly communicate that through our website and get that out to folks also of any changes that come.
Hey, may I just make a comment?
I think Marilyn had her hand up first.
I guess I want to go back to pedestrians, because if you listen to public health, they want people out walking. And if you think about North Cliff, where we're building new housing developments, there is no sidewalk on the east side of North Cliff. You've got all kinds of housing over there, and you've got signs saying, don't cross except at crosswalks. And so people have to walk 4 or 5 blocks up the hill to a crosswalk and down, and they're not going to do that. And you were talking about moving the parking from the courthouse to the other side of Alder, at least, thank goodness, blinking crosswalk lights, but I see at least 2 or 3 needed. And now you're talking about enforcing the no pedestrians, where you've got people living on one side of Alder up at the top of the hill, having to walk a considerable distance to a place where they can cross the street to come down. And I mean, I understand there are constraints, but we had a walkability study of town, and that's, you know, the whole community. And I don't think you're thinking enough about pedestrian movement on these major streets.
We certainly have thought about pedestrians. That is one thing with TIB and Complete Streets, that they are adamant that you try to stay within those. And you mentioned it, there are some constraints. The issue that you've got in some of these, we would love to put another crosswalk or another sidewalk on the hillside, which would be the north side of Olympic Highway North. But unfortunately, there's just not enough room. There's not enough room within the right of way to get one over there. So we really have to work within those constraints and try to get the best product out there that we can.
And so you put up pedestrian buttons so that people can stop traffic and cross.
Sure, and actually, Ryan actually sent an email out just the other day, and so we are being proactive, looking at some pedestrian flags, some other ways to help with pedestrian movement. So we certainly are aware of those concerns, and we are doing at this point everything we can possibly do. Yes?
Okay, well, respect, I don't think you really convinced me. I like what you did at the bottom of the hill, right there on 8th Street, where you closed off 8th Street right there at the hospital, at the library, and also where you put in the bus stop. I think that's beautiful. But given that it changes, it doesn't really change the traffic patterns that much going up the hill. It just before it splits into 2 lanes, it now happens after 8th Street instead of after 8th Street, whatever. But what I'm trying to say is, why are we changing what's already working from after we have 2 roads going all the way up the hill? Once you get to the top of the hill, you put in your new right turn lane, you add a brand new bus on-ramp, bus only little lane so you can drop people off the top. Why are we getting rid of the 2 lanes up the hill and the 1 lane down? because I don't see that we're really gaining anything in any way by changing that, given everybody's concern with emergency traffic, being able to cut through traffic when it is basically at a standstill. So my recommendation would be put in your bus turn at the bottom, put in a bus turn at the top, change the lane on B Street so it has exactly what you're talking about, just the way, but leave the 2 lanes up the hill, and instead of having the 2 lanes come together after Napa on top across the street from Skipworthy's there, we just go ahead and have those divert right at your new intersection with the bus traffic, which is slow anyways, gets to stop at the top, drop off a few people, you get your new lights and everything, everybody's happy, and we don't have any of that problem that everybody's concerned about with traffic stop up and down, and we need to get emergency traffic up there. It seems easy enough, and I know you're this preliminary, and you're getting some good feedback from a lot of people out here.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, please.
I remember years ago when improvements were made up on 13th Street and that traffic, or the island was put in there was some concern voiced at that time about there being difficulty with emergency vehicles going by. Have we seen that, or
We have not seen any concern on 13th. You're talking 13th and Northcliffe.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think we've heard any concerns with emergency vehicles getting through that
No,
area.
Okay.
We certainly have not taken in any complaints or heard from the public for emergency services if there is an issue.
Because that lane appears at least to be fairly narrow, going each direction, and then the traffic circle. So visually, it looks like it would cause problems, but I don't remember it being talked about since the planning stage.
We have not heard anything from emergency services or the public. Yes.
The islands on 13 need to be better lit and/or some yellow lines painted on the curb. They are really hard to see at night.
Again, I apologize, I don't mean to cut you off. I want to be respectful of everybody
Yes.
here that's talking about Alder Street project. If you would like to give your information to Brooke Kiltz in the back, we certainly will address that and give you some feedback. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So if you get the green light for that this year, what are we looking at for an estimated start date on the project?
We would look to go out to bid sometime early March, and most likely construction sometime in late spring of 2018, along with our Basin 3 project that will be going to bid about the same time and same kind of time frame for start date on that Basin 3 project, which is north of Alder Street. So yeah, we're looking at being fairly busy in 2018.
Good.
Hopefully. Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming out tonight and giving us your feedback.